All right, what's going on, you guys? We're back on another Tuesday. You know how we do every single 7 o'clock Tuesday Central Standard Time, 7 p.m., bringing you Elite Performance with Dr. Brad, and that is Elite PerforMEnce, spelled M-E-N for all the fellas out there. Yes, this show is for the fellas. Ladies, if you're hopping on, we welcome you by all means, but we also ask you that you can share this information with a high achieving male that you know can benefit from this information. And so this is the show where high achieving men come to do three things: prioritize their faith, maximize their performance, and pursue their purpose. And I'm your host, Dr. Brad, faith-based performance coach for men. And I help high achieving men prioritize their faith so that they can succeed at work without neglecting their faith and fulfillment. And so this show provides what I like to call the perfect combination of both faith-based and peak performance strategies for men to win at work and be fulfilled in life. So a very brief history for me, I was one of those guys, very high achieving, very motivated, very driven. I know a lot of brothers who are watching this. And let me just be clear real quick. I got to cut myself off. When I say brothers, I'm talking about the fellas. Like, we ain't just talking about black folks. We ain't just talking about, like, when I call you brother, I'm talking about all the men who are out here. Listen, we're driven. And if you're anything like me, sometimes I have driven myself into the ground or driven so hard that it came at the expense of my fulfillment and my faith. And I found myself way out of balance, successful, but stuck. And so this show is really going to provide some content and information and education for you to be able to say, you know what? How can you do it? What's the formula to win at work and succeed in life? Because there is a way to do it. And so that's my whole motivation, is for you to be able to win at work, but also succeed in life. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching this on Facebook, let me tell you why you should go to YouTube at some point and subscribe, because not only am I giving content every single week with a phenomenal guest who's going to be talking about something either related to their faith or how to increase our performance and productivity or pursue our purpose, but every single week I'm giving you content on YouTube of just giving great information, right? Videos, in addition to what we do with these live streams. And so you do not want to miss that content that we're giving you so that you can be the best man that you can be and hit on all cylinders, right? In your faith, your family, your health, your wealth, your career, your calling. All right. Just trying to help men be the best they can be. So go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. If you're here on the replay, we appreciate it. All right. And so this is my time to kind of rant. All right. This is my time to kind of talk about something that's been on my mind. And I'll just kind of give you a peek into kind of what's going on in my life. I've recently had a conversation with a client of mine, and what I'm going to talk about right now in these next few minutes is for all of my high achieving, driven, motivated fellas out there who have that dream that's scary, like that vision that almost scares you because you know you can't do it by yourself, like that vision that is just, sometimes it won't let you sleep. Sometimes you just got to get up and walk around the house. Sometimes you got to get up and walk out the house because you just got to dream by yourself. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those are the type of dreams. I'm talking about those visionaries. I'm talking to you right now, because here's the deal. Many of us are getting discouraged as we're pursuing that dream. And so I want to talk a little bit about that discouragement, because here's one of the things that I've noticed and that I want to encourage you to do, is that oftentimes discouragement we can't avoid, but one of the things that can help us through that time is making sure we're around the right people. You see, we've got to be around the right circles, because when we're having these conversations about dreams and visions and impact, if you're talking to the wrong person, it's like talking a different language with someone. It's like I'm talking English, but you're talking Spanish, and they'll just look at you like, I don't know why you even want that. Like, aren't things like good for you or good enough? Like, it's like talking different languages. And if you keep being around the wrong folks, guess what? You're going to start thinking you crazy. See, that's what happened to me. It's like, I'm not talking to the right people. And I'm like, people aren't understanding my vision. Yes, RK3, what's going on, brother? Your circle is critical. It is crucial. And so I remember I wasn't moving as fast because the table that I'm around, they're not very encouraging. Sometimes they're just kind of tolerating me. Sometimes they're kind of just tolerating you. But you see, have you ever had a conversation with someone about something you're going after, or you selling your dreams, and the conversation is just simple? Like the conversation is just meshes. It's like we're talking the same language. Here's what I'm gonna encourage you to do. Get around the people that the conversation is easy. The conversation is just simple and easy. I happened to have a call yesterday, was blessed to get connected with somebody very high up in an organization. The conversation was just easy. And I was like, this is the way the conversations are supposed to go. Talking about the dreams, talking about the goals, and it just makes sense. So when the conversations start making sense, when it's easy, number one, you'll know you ain't crazy. And number two, you'll start realizing this is the table I need to be at. Shout out to a really good person, just a phenomenal entrepreneur and leader, guy by the name of Lamar Tyler. He's a leader of Traffic Sales and Profit. Was blessed to be able to have his firm do some work for me. And I heard him say something that just really stuck with me. He said, the conversation is different at the winning table. And that right there just stuck with me. The conversation is different at the winning table. So let me tell you, if you're the only one talking about winning at your table, it's time to get a different table. Or if you want to be around that table that's winning, start going to that table. But I'm telling you, who you hang around is really going to influence just how far and how fast you can go. And it's going to help your sanity so that you know that you ain't crazy. All right, you guys. So I encourage you, man, just make sure that the conversations are easy out there as you going after your dreams. All right. All right. I'm done with my rant. All right, you guys. Now listen, it's time to bring up another phenomenal guest. I was telling him before we got on, I'm probably more excited to talk to my guest, or at least just as excited as everybody who's watching and listening. So he and I recently got a chance to connect. Love his content. His name is Pierre Quinn. And there's two words that really stick out and just it's just two words that really just stick out to me whenever I look at his content. One is leadership, the other is courage. Both of which I know I can use help in. So this will probably be like a therapy session or a coaching session for me, but hopefully it'll be the same thing for you guys. And so those are the two big things we're going to be talking about today, is leadership and courage. And so Pierre Quinn is a sought-after speaker, author, educator, consultant, and minister who focuses on helping others live, learn, and lead with confidence. He's an extremely gifted communicator. He's the author of a couple of books, Leading While Green, How Emerging Leaders Can Ripen into Effective Leaders. And then his most recent book, which is Leading While Scared, How to Find the Courage to Keep Going. He's the CEO of the Cardell Group, LLC, which is a consulting firm which focuses on growing leaders and empowering teams of all sizes. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring on a recent friend and another phenomenal guest, Mr. Pierre Quinn. What's going on, man?
Doc, good to be with you today. I'm excited. Now, I don't know if you're as excited as I am. I know you say you're excited, but I don't know if you're as excited as I am.
Well, we'll see, man. We got some folks who hopping on already. I think you know RK3, Robert Kennedy. He was on last week. And so
absolutely.
I still got folks who's talking about his show from last week and some of the stories that he was telling, which makes sense because he's such a great storyteller. And a good friend of mine just hopped on. Yes, leadership and courage. Yes, we are ready to listen and learn for sure. So Pierre, why don't you just kind of tell us in your own words what it is that you do, and then let's kind of jump into the story in terms of how you got here.
Yeah, so my focus is really on helping leaders courageously begin the journey to personal and professional transformation. I do that through keynote speaking, I do that through coaching, and I do that through consulting. I have a boutique consulting firm, and I've worked with organizations across the country really to help develop their leaders to take courageous steps to move the organization forward. So yeah, I've been doing this work for several years, and it is tough work. when you're talking about courage and leadership and making changes and facing the things that quite often frighten us, but it's some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done.
How'd you get into it, man? Well, how'd you find that this, I often I talk about that sweet
Yeah.
spot, you know what I'm saying? And I think we're all looking for, and this would be a good segue into your story, but also the topic we're talking about today, because I think at some point as men, we get to that point in life where it's like, it's not necessarily about success, but it's about
Mhm.
significance. And I feel like that significance is tied to something that we can get really good at and like know, like, this is the spot I'm supposed to be in. How'd you discover that? How'd you get to that?
For the longest time, high school, college, I had that set of transferable skills that, people said you could go anywhere, you could be anything. If you have the ability to communicate with people, if you have the ability to tell good stories, as my good friend Robert Kennedy III does so well, if you can connect with people, if you can listen and you can tell stories, people start saying you can do anything. You should be X, you should be Y, you should be Z. And for the longest time, I sort of followed that particular kind of career meanderings. Now, I'm a person of faith, so I grew up in church and I could speak well. And if you're a guy that grows up in church and you speak well, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, you could be a pastor. So that was something that I held on to for a little bit in my high school years. I threw it off the last parts of high school, and I essentially said, what's the closest I can get to pastoral ministry, talking to people about their faith without going into religion or theology? So I picked a communication major. I did a communication undergrad degree, graduate degree, started teaching at the undergraduate level, got into fundraising and I love fundraising because it was storytelling for a particular cause, but that just wasn't it. Eventually I went back to the seminary to do that theological training, became a pastor. And what's unique, Dr. Brad, is that around the time that my pastoral career started, my professional speaking career started too. They were about 6 months apart. So I pastored full time in 2 states for 7 years, and at the same time I began a public speaking career. And I found that the more I spoke in places outside the church, talking to people about some of these ancient wisdom literature principles that we nuance and shift to be fit for marketplace conversations. The more I did that, the better I was able to lead my congregation. And the more I was able to lead my congregation, the better I was able to speak to people who would never walk into a church. So October 2019, kind of felt this sense of calling and counsel with some mentors, friends, coaches, my tribe, my community, and a lot of prayer. And it was clear that my time as a congregational leader was what was done that time, because I was doing both, running my boutique consulting company and pastoring a church. The time of leading congregations was done, and it was full time, what I call a ministry to the marketplace, and helping leaders, especially emerging leaders, develop, activate more so the courage they need to make changes, not just in their jobs, because we do that more so at a decent clip, but what are the personal transformations? What are the things that they need to be courageous about and changing in their personal life? And that's pretty much how we got here.
Man, it couldn't be a better fit for exactly what I was describing with the show.
Yeah.
I think and one of the hard kind of, I guess you could say, slaps in the face for me was, kind of taking this value evaluation of my life and realizing that where I put the majority of my time is really where my values were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to say that if someone asked me, like, what were your values? I would say, oh, my values in my faith, or it's in, my family life or whatever. But my life really wasn't a reflection of the values that I was saying. And I'll never forget, a friend of mine asked me to kind of do this assessment, and I just saw how much of my time, more than anything, I saw how little time was being put toward the things that I actually wanted my values to be in. And it was just incongruent, which was why I was so out of whack at the time, and why I wasn't nearly being the man that I wanted to be. What do you think is one of the greatest challenges for men who are driven like that and tend to really put less priority on things that are more fulfilling? So some of these personal life things like family and faith.
Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge?
I think somewhere along the line, we believe the deception that once you get the things that everyone else thinks matters, then you'll have time to figure everything else out and put attention there. So once you get everything that matters, once you get the C-suite, once you build a consulting company, once you have a huge social following, once you make millions of dollars, then that's going to give you the margin to do some of the things that maybe bring you a greater sense of fulfillment as it relates to relationships. And the truth is, success is always empty, has an empty nuance to it when you're in it by yourself. And we see this, people who are great at all levels of life, who reach the top of any industry, sometimes their biggest mistakes, their biggest missteps come out of a sense of loneliness because they spent so much time fulfilling their top, their all-star, their superstar, Fortune 500, Forbes, tons of awards, but they've never put the time into relationships that really kind of balance you out. And you know this as having a family too. There's something that brings you back down to reality when you've stood on the stage and you've given a keynote to 2,500 people and it was a rousing applause. And you come home and your wife is like, okay, great job, honey. All right, need you to take out this trash. It's a sense of balance that we need sometimes. And sometimes we don't get that because we're not pouring into relationships. And we believe, listen, if I get to the top, then I'll have time. And what usually happens is we make that rush to the top, and then we get there and we realize a lot of the things that we needed to prepare us for this space, we don't have them. And we kind of just keep the cycle going. So it's really a lie that once you get all the stuff that the world, society, culture says to be successful, then you'll have the margin to have relationships that matter. But it's actually the relationships that matter that help you sustain the success that driven people work so hard to achieve.
Man, dude, like if if I could have had you tell me that years ago, and I would actually be ready to listen. That's probably the problem, is I probably wouldn't have been ready to listen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be ready. Is that there's this, and I love the way you said it's just a lie. It's like, it's a lie. There's this misconception, which I had, which was, dude, I got to drive, go and justify doing it at the cost of my faith, at the cost of my relationships with my wife and kids and friends. And before long, you turn around, you're a completely different person. Like, conversations aren't the same with friends. Sometimes those conversations have been so painful because you're such a different person. The friends are kind of like, I appreciate you reaching out, but I mean, I'm kind of good if we don't hang out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's hard for me to say, but it's just a reality, man. There's relationships that I have had to, bring back on the men, because I'm like, sorry, man, like I was too driven, and my relationship with you was extremely conditional to, is this time going to be like, this time is like taken away. And that's how I would look at things, is like, this is time taking away from what I'm trying to do here. How can we help people who were where I was, and maybe where some of these guys are now, of convincing them that, yes, it is a lie? And I love the way you put it, is that we require those relationships to actually not only get to where we're going, but sustain it.
Yeah.
The sustainability. I mean, what do you think?
It's a couple things. One is, we talk about, and we talk about surrounding yourself with the right people. And you talked about this in your rant, and you could have gone on longer with that rant. I would have been okay with that. This reality that we need people. We need more people, especially when you're successful, especially when you're driven, especially when you're noteworthy. And you get a couple of books under your belt, and you travel, and you command a certain keynotes speaking fee, and all of that stuff.
Right.
We need a certain quality of people around us who are not impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Who are not impressed at all. Not that they intentionally try to pull us down, but that their relationship with us is not dependent upon our external success.
Wow.
We need some people to say, okay, that's cool. I applaud. I'm there. I'm front row with whatever you're doing. I'm buying, I'm supporting, I'm not asking for a discount. And, here's an area where you need to work on, or you're slipping in this area, or let's talk about this. Let's be vulnerable in this conversation. Because what we find a lot of times in the areas of success, in the arenas of success, it's easy as you climb whatever ladder, and sometimes we find we climb a ladder of success and it's, propped up against the wrong building. Mm-hmm. That's a totally different conversation. But whatever ladder of success, it's easy to be surrounded by people who will affirm what you're doing simply because there's some benefit for them. Right. Even if that benefit for them is a detriment to you. So they'll tell you whatever you need to hear to get you keep going and grinding and pushing, because they elicit some benefit from it. But you need some people around that say, hey, listen, this is great. And you need some people around you who are not impressed. Doesn't matter what stage, doesn't matter who you are serving, doesn't matter what your client list, doesn't matter what you drive, where you live. Some people who are authentically in a relationship with you because they care about you and they want to see you at your best. And these people help to keep us balanced. And the second thing I'll mention is that it not just have those people around, but elicit their opinion. Ask them. I was having a conversation with my oldest daughter, and I said, you got two choices. Choice number one, I could be multi-million-dollar speaker, cover of magazines, flying across the country, and buy you everything you want. But you would never see me. Or I could not be those things. I could, not be well known at all, not be famous, not be social media famous. And we have a decent living, but you see me a fair amount. And my daughter, she's 12. Wow. And she said something. And I know it's not true for everyone. This is not to paint everything with the same color brush. But my daughter said that the majority of young people that she interacts with her age, when they have all the things that they want, it usually means that one of their parents is missing in some way.
And she was able to recognize that pattern already?
She's 12 years old. And I said, hey, you got two choices. Choice number one, dad'll buy you anything you want. Because, they talk about their friends. Daddy, can I have this? Can I have that? That's I said, right. I can buy you everything you want. I could be, rich, maybe semi-famous. And I work so much to buy you those things, but you never see me. Or, we can have, a well-to-do, but I'm here a lot. And she said, yeah, Dad, the kids I know who have everything usually means one of their parents is, missing in some way. And I'm like, this came out of a 12-year-old's mouth? Wow. Because I'm wrestling with, at this point in my career and things I'm trying to build, and I'm super driven and I want to achieve and all of those things. And sometimes I find myself, oh, okay, just give me 5 minutes. And 5 minutes turns into an hour is 2 hours. And it's time for the kids to go to bed. And they just want somebody to come and say goodnight and kiss them on the forehead. And like you were saying earlier, yeah, but that 5 minutes, this could be the blog post that transforms. This could be the YouTube video that transforms. This could be the LinkedIn outreach that transforms. And if I don't do it, I know that, but when I get it, then I'll make up for all the times that I miss tucking them in the bed at night. And the truth is, it won't. And it's sobering to think that you could get everything you wanted and still miss the things that matter. So I try as much as I can to check in and ask my wife, ask my kids. And that's tough for a driven person, for the leader of my home to ask, hey, how am I doing? Oh man, Come on. I'm the man of the house. I'm the priest of the home. What do you mean check in and ask how am I doing? Yeah, but the top performer, you work with top performers. The top performers always ask their coaches, how am I doing?
Yeah.
My family, plays that role. They need to know how I need to check in and see how am I doing. So I need to surround myself with people who are not impressed, not just family members, people who with a different perspective that don't live with you. And then with the people who are close to you, elicit their opinion and ask them, how am I doing? Am I missing something? And what are the pivots that I need to make? And it's okay if it hurts your feelings a little bit. It's okay.
And it is okay, man. And everything you're talking about, first of all, my daughter's 11, and she's
you already
my
know.
oldest child. And we're getting to this, yes. And so we're getting to this point where we can have these more deep conversations, right? Look, my sons, 8 and 4. I mean, if we sit down for 3 seconds, that's success, But my daughter and I, we sit down and we have these candid conversations. And so as I'm listening to you, I'm like, yes. And so they're looking for something. Everybody, I think, is looking for who we interact with, work, family, friends. They're looking for us each for something different.
Yeah.
And so knowing what they're looking for, and then, like you said, it's this intentional check-in. That's what I just wrote down. It's like these intentional check-ins to see how far off of you are you, from the mark. It's tough to take the answer. It's tough to hear my wife sometimes say, like, look, I need you to be more present. When I feel like I am, but really all I'm doing is justifying the little time that I'm giving over there, or trying to justify that, like you said, getting that Facebook post in or whatever the case may be. And so I love the fact that you're so candid about that. I want to talk about something real quick. You coach leaders, you coach high performers. What are some of the blind spots that you see, particularly with some of the men that you work with? Like, what are the blind spots that they have that they don't see, that ends up being a problem for them that you have to work on them with?
Well, one of the biggest ones is this idea that the way that I'm doing it is the best way, and that in order for our teams to be successful, they have to do it my way. So, having taught for several years and done a lot of studies in leadership, I know you're quite familiar with the theory of great man leadership, that especially during war times and major movements in world history, need that person that's going to stand up and say, unflappable, very stoic, this is how we do things. And in a life or death situation, that makes sense. We don't have time to be meandering and floundering when lives are on the line in that way. Most of our situations are not like that. And because of that, this leadership style over the years has really turned off a lot of potential assets to our organization. A great example of this is, I'm a basketball fan, and Steve Kerr, coach of the Golden State Warriors, was writing an article, and he shared in this article how one of his players, one of the best shooters in the game, Klay Thompson, he said Klay Thompson messed up in a game, and he yelled at him in the game. And he said for the rest of the game, Klay Thompson could not perform. So he talked to some other coaches afterwards, and they said, people of wisdom who have been around the game and in different ways, they said, you can't treat all players the same way. So he said next time Klay messed up in a game, he quietly talked to him, had him make the adjustments. And he said, those are the times when Klay performs the best, because I recognize I can't. Some players you need, they're grab the bull by the horns. Let's shoot straight, look me dead in my eye and tell me what's wrong type of people. Everybody's not like that. And one of the biggest mistakes is that we think we can paint everything with the same brush and tackle every problem with the same way. And we believe that making adjustments is being soft, making pivots, recognizing that some people you need to speak softly to is saying that you're not a tough and commanding, take charge type of leader, when the opposite is actually true. Taking charge of a situation is knowing how to adapt in every situation to the people you're talking to. So when I talk to leaders and I explain to them, when we walk through the systems and the assessments to show them, this is the makeup of your team, this is your particular leadership style, and this is how not to talk to people who move this way, and they can see that it gives them more control and greater leadership, it turns out much better. But that idea that if you're not doing it the way that I'm doing it, you're doing it wrong, and you're going to get, yelling and screaming and force and power and drive. And what we know about sports, that sometimes it's force, sometimes it's finesse. And the greatest leaders know how to work that balance between force and finesse, and really use that as leverage for their teams. Some people you're going to have to yell at. Well, not necessarily yell at, maybe, but not necessarily yell at. Some people you're going to have to be more intense with.
For sure.
And some people, it's a short comment, a simple tweak, a conversation over a cup of coffee that gets them supercharged. So that mistake of trying to handle every problem, that thing of if the only tool you have is a hammer, all your problems look like nails.
That's right.
Seeing that there are more tools in the toolkit and recognizing that you need to leverage different strategies of talking to people. And you would think high performers got this figured out already.
Yeah.
But sometimes they think what got me here is the best case scenario for everybody. But what got you there, won't keep you here.
Right. Or it certainly won't advance you.
Absolutely.
I think to a certain degree, I think if my thought is if you're high achieving and driven, man, you'll get to a certain point just off sheer grit. You'll get there because you're just hard headed. Like, that's me. I'm like, look, I'll do it all wrong, but I'll get there. But to sustain it, but I think to get to the next level, you got to be more cerebral. You got to be more, okay, this situation is different than that situation. And you got to be a lot more aware. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking about The Last Dance. I'm sure you watched The Last Dance if you're a basketball guy, and to be able to see.
Doc, I ain't watch it.
Really?
I'm from Michigan, Doc. Oh, I grew up. You already know. I grew up 15 minutes from the Palace of Auburn Hills, Doc. I still have yet.
Well, this is what I will say, because I'm not a fan. Look, I'm down here in Spurs and Mavericks and Rockets country. We ain't got nothing to do with y'all. Y'all keep going. However, I will say this: it was impressive to see how Phil managed people different, and that was the one thing that I just really respected. Like he didn't manage Dennis Rodman the same way he handled Pippen, or the same way he handled Mike. And so when you get to a certain level, I think to really, like you said, to excel, you got to start being extremely cerebral and looking at it's like, I can't do this the same way for everybody. I want to talk about courage, because
Dr. Brad, can I throw this in right before you transition? I want to add, especially on the family piece, my daughters 12 and 10 have two different personality styles. I cannot lead them the same way.
Wow.
My oldest daughter is exactly like her father. She is stubborn as the day is long, not easily intimidated. What, if you got an attitude or opinion, that's fine. If you got to say something, you might as well bring it, because I'm going to have my opinion too. So, with her, my tactic, my frame is different than my 10-year-old, who just a look in her direction makes her freeze and sometimes even crumble, depending on how I look at her. So recognizing if in my family, I cannot lead my family, respond to my daughters the same way. And I have to recognize and be open to their particular style and communication differences in order for me to be a good dad and successful at this parenting thing that we're all struggling through.
That's right. Well, let me ask you, sometimes you hear this phrase, and I could be saying it all wrong, but you'll understand what I say when I say, well, you can't ask to lead some big organization if you can't lead at home. What are your thoughts on that phrase?
So it is possible to be publicly successful
Mhm.
and a private failure,
Mm. Mm.
but that only lasts for so long.
Ooh. Before it catches up to you, Pierre?
Sooner or later,
Really?
sooner or later, the private failure is going to have impact on your public persona. And so because we can't separate, we try to, I love emotional intelligence. It's one of the things that I work with now. And now in the workplace, as you know, we're having more conversations about feelings and emotional vocabulary and how we wrestle with what people are going through and how we can be more perceptive and more understanding. This idea that I can consistently berate my family, yell at my kids, have my temper flaring at home, be a Tasmanian devil from the old Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoon at home, and then consistently go to work and button up, be nice, pristine, lead meetings, take care of staff, all of that. Eventually, sooner or later, that work side is going to see that private side of me. They're
Mm.
going to see the disruption. They're going to see the inequity. They're going to see that flare of tension that I'm not doing well, that I'm not managing, that I'm not navigating, that I'm not adjusting to in my personal life is going to come out in my public life. And for a lot of people, we've seen the news stories. We've seen the athletes. We've
Mm.
seen executives. Something happens and this executive has gone off and beat up their spouse or something happened with their children, and you're
Right.
asking yourself, they lead a multi-billion dollar organization, and they've been doing this, and they're a New York Times bestselling author, and they've been on TV. How is this possible? All we see is the public side. If that
Wow.
private side is not in check, if it's not being managed, if you're not honest about it with the people who are closest to you, it has the potential to derail you in a major, major way. And some people we just haven't heard about because they have great PR teams. Let's be honest. They got
Wow.
great PR teams
Preach.
that spin it. But it's the reality. I coming from a pastoral ministry background and context, one of my mentors said to me, he said he was in charge of supporting all the pastors in the particular area, and he would visit their families and hang out with them on the weekend. And he said, when I come to your church to hear you speak, present, lead a meeting, do whatever, he said this to all the pastors. He said, I don't look at you.
Mm.
He said, I look at your spouse and I look at your children.
Mm.
If your spouse and your children don't look like they believe you, then I know we have a problem, and there's some one-on-ones, some private conversations we need to have. That's the
Wow.
real indicator. So, when I want my family to see that the way that I am with them at home in the positive aspects
Right.
is the person they see on stage quite often when I'm in sessions like this, my daughters are standing right out of camera view in the side, listening, watching, sometimes
Yes.
making funny faces to get me
Oh,
to
oh,
laugh.
trust me. Trust me. Yes.
But
Yes.
they're taking mental notes to see, is this the same dad? Is this the same dad?
Wow.
And that's what's going to stick with them. They're not
Oh
going to
man.
think, oh, there's pictures of my dad in Vegas at the Bellagio Hotel, and there's hundreds of people in the room, and he's standing on stage. That's cool. No, they're going to remember how did he interact with me before that and after that, and is this the same
Ooh.
person?
And so, listen. I hope what the fellas are gleaning from this is leadership is not just what you do at the workplace. We hear that word leadership, and I'll be honest, I
Yeah.
am guilty of when I hear leadership, I'm thinking of someone on a stage,
Hmm.
someone in front of a microphone, and
Yeah.
someone, with a lot of people behind them and saying, let's go. I don't think about it in my home. But
Hmm.
congruence is a key. Told y'all I like this more than y'all would. Congruence is a key to leadership. Congruence of who you are in front of the camera, off the camera, at work, outside of work. That congruence is key. It sounds like will also help with your sustainability. Because like you said, at some point, those two worlds are going to crash, man. And one's going to take out the other or potentially try to, like you said, derail you.
You know, in the coaching paradigm and in the consulting space, you know, at a certain point, depending on who your client is and depending on the interaction, people open up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sometimes admittedly, they'll say, the real problem is X, Y, and Z is tough at home. And it's just kind of throwing me off my game at work. Now, I'm not a therapist, so I don't do therapy.
Sure.
You know, but, you know, I ask clients sometimes, so what are you going to do about this thing?
Yeah.
At home that's directly impacting your leadership capacity at work? Like, what's the plan? Who are you around? Where are you going to change it? Because listen, we read so many books about success, so many motivational videos out there, the internet. Yep. I mean, we put out content that talks about success and performance. But if we're honest, we don't spend enough time talking about that private component.
Yeah.
That you can be the best in the eyes of all the important people and still open the door of your house and no one wants you there.
Oh, wait.
That's a problem for a man. That's a problem.
So, and Vaughn Moore just hopped on and said, the home life is the foundation for public leadership. What you do behind closed doors will eventually show when you open that door and enter the public arenas of life. Yeah. Here's what I had to painfully learn, Pierre, and which is what I now understand. And I have to do this. And that's why, like, when you mentioned the intentional check-ins and having people who hold you accountable, by the way, this is why coaching and why everyone, I believe, needs some kind of coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's because you just can't see your mistakes, your flaws, the things that are coming ahead in your own frame. You just can't see it. You need somebody from an objective view who will be real with you. But I have now come to the conclusion that my success is influenced and even much more directly associated with my fulfillment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we look at those things as two different things. And to be honest with you, I'll let you in on, look, I say them both that way. I'm like, you can have success and fulfillment because that's how the world sees it.
Mm-hmm.
But really the way I look at it is my success is contingent upon my fulfillment. And therefore I seek fulfillment first now because it's not hard for me to go drive and it goes hard. Right. And so for me, I've had to say, look, fulfillment first, let me stop because I'm guilty of just what you said, man. Hey, you know what? 5 minutes, 3 minutes, like that, let me just, hey, let me just look that, look,
guilty,
right?
Guilty.
That's me. And I've had to have people in place, even my wife. And I know some brothers gonna be like, oh, your wife help you with the check-ins? Yes. Cause I'm like, look, if I'm not doing the men's Bible study, if I don't go do some of these things that I know are going to keep me in line, then I got to be the best me I need to be from an unselfish way so that I can be the best I can be for y'all, so I can be the best doctor I can be, so that I can be the best performance coach I can be. And it took me a hard time to recognize that. And it's so refreshing to hear you talk about how well they're tied together from a leadership expert. Like, nah, man, like, sure, you can succeed at work, man, but at some point, if things ain't right, if you're not congruent, if you're not the same person that you hear at work at home, or unfortunately, if you are that same person, it's just not going to be good. And we don't hear, we live in a world where, we're not like really embellishing and showing well fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We about that trophy life, man. We're about that cash. We're about that, that house, and tangible success. But I can say that now from a sustainability perspective, now that I've prioritized more of my fulfillment, the success is more gratifying too, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I'm not perfect. Let me make this clear. I'm far from perfect, which is why I have coaches in my life, because I recognized just how far I was, and I needed somebody to be able to see that in me. And yeah, man, it's big. It's big. Dude, look, and it's so funny because I told him before, I was like, man, we're going to try to be within a certain time, but it's still good. It's too good, Pierre. It's too good. I want to talk about your book. I want to talk about courage.
Yeah.
I want to know, one, how do you define courage? I'm curious about that. I've kind of got my own thoughts about like what courage is.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about how can guys courageously pursue something that they know something else is out there for them.
Yeah.
So let's start with the definition of courage. Like, how do you see that?
So there's a quote and there's a dictionary definition. So when you look at the dictionary definition, courage is that willingness to venture. Venture literally means to go from one place to another. We're used to the ad in front of it. We're used to adventure. Adventure literally means to leave where you are and go somewhere else. Courage is the willingness to venture, to persevere, which means to keep going once you've started, and then withstand, to once you get there, be committed to doing all it takes to stay there. And for a lot of us, we get derailed at certain spots in the game. We get derailed when it's time to start something, to leave where we are, our comfort zone. We say, I want to work out more, but man, the couch and Netflix and my favorite snacks, I'll have to give those up. Because whenever you start a new adventure, it demands that you leave something behind. So we get derailed at the venture. We get derailed at the perseverance piece. We started, but man, it's just so hard to keep going. And we accept the comfort versus the consistently moving forward. And then it's that piece of withstanding. Like once you get there, it's work to stay there or to keep advancing. But there's a quote, Mary Ann Rodmacher says, sometimes courage is that little voice that said at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. Like little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. So maybe today was trash. Maybe today was terrible. Maybe today I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good father, didn't lead the team meeting well, responded, in a way that wasn't becoming with my team or with a vendor or with a client. And now it's 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock, and I'm sitting here with my journal and I'm recapping my day and I'm thinking about all the mistakes that I made. Courage says, when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to have a conversation with my family. When I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to call my vendor. I'm going to apologize to my team. I'm going to reach out again to that coworker. I'm going to try again, knowing that there's the potential that I may be rejected, that somebody else may blow up in return, that it might not work out the way that I want it to happen. Sometimes we think courage is the outcome. Courage is the success, but it's not. Courage is the space between I know I need to do something and I've done something. That entire space in between is really how I define and how I work through courage. And the truth is, most of us have it. We just need to activate it.
Yeah.
We've experienced courage before.
Yeah.
We got to activate it. We have to, like cars now that are keyless and you have a little fob in your pocket. You have all the power in the world in this amazing car, but it doesn't matter until you push that little button. If you push that, until you push that button, your features don't matter. How fast you can go to 0 to 60 doesn't matter. The comfort of the seats, the quality of the sound system, the ride of the tires, nothing matters until you push the button. And once you push the button and things are activated, things are put into motion, then you can see exactly how much you have. And for some of us as men, the hardest thing to do is to have that conversation. Sometimes we think just through grit and brute force and the swing of our hammer or our axe or the strength of our arms, we can ignore the blunders that we made yesterday and work extra hard today to give us a better tomorrow. But the truth is, it's the hard work with the conversation. As a matter of fact, people don't care about how much we work or how hard we work if we're not willing to have the conversations about the things that matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, that courage is that space between I need to do it and it's already done.
I never looked at it that way, man, in terms of courage is really the means, not the ends.
Yeah.
It's the means by which something happens. It's the conduit with which big things happen. And it really means like it's doing the difficult thing. And that's different for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pierre, right?
Absolutely.
Like my son, it's extremely difficult walking away from that Super Nintendo. Old school Super Nintendo, by the way, for those of you who are gamers, this is like old school. Nintendo. It's like a little old school Super Nintendo we have, and he loves playing his little old school games, and that's difficult for him to do. So me asking him to do that is completely different than my daughter, who would be like, okay, like, cool, Dad. Like, that's not a big deal. So for each of us, it's doing the difficult thing, and that's the courage. Let me ask you, do you feel that courage is an absence of fear?
So the book that I wrote, Leading While Scared, how to find the courage to keep going. We mistakenly think that in order for me to be courageous, I have to be fearless. Translation, I have to eliminate all of my fears. Well, we don't have time to talk about just how impossible that perspective is. Totally get away from everything that you're afraid of so that you can move forward. Now, that's not going to happen. What happens, what successful people recognize is in spite of, or alongside, or in the midst of, I'm still going to take the step. I mean, I'm married, right? When I proposed to my wife on a beach in Southwest Michigan on the sunrise, I was afraid. There's a possibility of rejection.
Everything sounded and looked.
It's a possibility of rejection. And even though I have that feeling that I can be rejected, she could say no, this might not work out. These are all real and present fears that are surrounding this situation. I still had the courage on that beach to get on one knee and ask her to marry me. Courage says, in spite of the feelings and even the voices, some of your own doing and some of someone else's doing, I am still going to do the thing that matters. It's everyday courage. It's not necessarily like Everest courage or skydive courage. Right. It's, man, I yelled at my kids and that was a bad move. I should probably go upstairs and apologize. Man, that takes everyday courage. Man, I told a client I would have a proposal to them by day X, and it's day X. Instead of ignoring them and getting into them on the next day, pick up the phone or send that message. I know I said I would have it done. I don't have it done. Just kind of owning it and leaning into it and not ignoring it. Because the things that you ignore will bother you for forever. So I tell this story in one of my keynotes about the place we used to go. Cedar Point is I lived in Michigan. Cedar Point is in Ohio, one of the #1 theme parks in the world for several years, roller coaster parks. And I remember going on this one year, and there was this ride, this new roller coaster that I wanted to ride. And I told everyone leading up there that I was going to ride it. And then I got to Cedar Point and I was scared. So every time people wanted to go ride it, I said, I'll ride it later. I'll ride it later. I'll ride it later. And for the entire trip, that whole day, it felt like the thing was looking at me. It felt like it was making fun of me, like it was taunting me. And I left Cedar Point that day and I didn't ride it. And I had this sick feeling in my stomach because I knew I said I was going to do it. I knew I had the people around me who would have done it with me, but I let fear tell me, because it was fast and big, not to ride it. So next year I go back and I said, I'm going to ride the biggest, fastest roller coaster first, completely afraid, just paralyzed with fear. I get on this roller coaster and I ride 2 minutes, 90s, however long a roller coaster is. And do you know, for the rest of the day at Cedar Point, every other ride was lackluster. It was like, yeah. Hey, you want to ride this? Someone would say, hey, I want to ride this roller coaster, but I'm a little scared to ride it. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll ride it with you. Why? Because I conquered the scary thing first. When I conquered the scary thing first, and I did not do it by eliminating the fear, I did it by getting on the ride while still being afraid. When I conquered the scary thing first, it put everything else into perspective. So many of us are letting the things that need us to exhibit courage, we're letting them linger. And for years, they are consistently taunting us like huge roller coasters to 12-year-old kids. But as soon as you face the thing and you deal with it, and you might get knocked down, bumped, bruised, you might fall, you might get laughed at, it might not work the way you wanted it to work. But as soon as you face it and you realize that it's not as bad as you think, then it will put everything else into perspective. But until you do that, you're going to have that sick feeling, and it's just going to linger for however long it takes for you to face it.
I love the fact that you talk about in spite of, alongside. Hey, I'm going to do this despite the fact that there's fear.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that I'm scared. Despite the fact that I don't want to. Man, you would listen, Pierre, you was walking down my lane when you was talking about, man, I need to go apologize. I'm like, man, this man gonna make me apologize to my wife. We had that argument last night. I'm like, come on, man. She watching too. She's gonna be like, you heard me. But I mean, like, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
It's like, do it even if you don't want to, but do it even the fact that if it's scared. It's like, do the hard thing despite whatever that other reason is, fill in the blank, despite the fact that it's scary, despite that you don't want to, despite the fact that you're gonna have to kind of eat some crow.
Yeah.
That's true courage, man. Tell us about your book. Who'd you write the book for? What can people expect to get from the book? Again, you guys, the title of his book is called Leading While Scared, this is great that we're kind of landing the plane on this topic. Leading While Scared, how to find the courage to keep going. Fellas, men.
Yeah.
If it ain't one thing that I know I've been at before is I'm like, oh my gosh, can I keep going? Can I keep going as a father? Can I keep going as a husband? Can I keep going on this journey of this big dream that I have? Can I keep going because I've been losing trying to lose the same 20 pounds for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, how do you find the courage to keep going? So who'd you write it for, and what can we expect from reading it?
So I wrote Leading While Scared in a unique place in my life. And I really wrote it for people who experience what I call first tier success. First tier success is when you get the job. It's when you get that responsibility. It's when you get the office, when you get the title, when you're in charge of a team, all the stuff that you work so hard to get to. Really what I talked about in Leading While Green, getting to the space where people recognize your gifts and talents. Now you're here, and now you realize it takes a whole different set of skills to lead on this second tier than it did on the first tier. And how, when different things are coming at me, when different challenges are coming at me, things that I just can't get past because I have charisma, or because I have talent, or because I have connections. And a lot of it has to do with, and I know you talk to your people about this, that the higher you climb the ladder of success, the more you have to deal with your personal sense of I call it the imposter syndrome. The more you climb the ladder, the more you deal with all of that stuff, the baggage from childhood and early on. That I call it in Leading While Scared, the scared little kid.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
that,
Like,
that,
who am I? Who
yeah.
am I? Question.
And when things happen, what you revert to your scared little kid. You revert to when the person on the team doesn't like you. You think about in high school, the girls didn't like you.
Right.
When someone, steals your idea, you think about when you talk to your friends about the science project and someone said they're going to do this idea just because they could, just so they could take it from you, or some abuse or some trauma. And the higher you go, the more notable your position, the more people look to you, the more really vulnerability and tension that you have to deal with, exposure you have to deal with. And these are scary moments. And I remember sitting at home sometimes thinking, I don't want to go to this meeting because I know at this meeting, someone's going to say something. It's going to trigger a past memory or a past reaction. It's going to make me feel inadequate. It's going to make me feel defensive. It's going to make me feel, and as the leader in this scenario, I don't want people to see me that way. So what are the tools, the habits, the practices, the routines that go into when you're facing the monsters and the demons and the space of being unsure, and even the people on your team that don't believe in, and sometimes are even trying to undermine and derail your leadership? How can you keep going when you're sometimes even deathly afraid that it's gonna turn out badly? How to find and where the places where you find and where you activate your courage. And the truth is, for many of us, the same place that we revert to when something negative in our professional life and even our personal lives happen, that formative years, sometimes that's the best place to go back and look for your courage too. Recognizing that there were major milestones and achievements and things that you were equipped with in your younger years that you can tap back into to find success on this second tier. So leading while scared is following the journey of a person who is in that second tier of responsibility and has all these things coming at them and is trying to figure out what are the places that I go to find and activate my courage so that I can put one foot in front of the other and keep going.
We have short-term memory, man.
You already know.
We forget the wins that we had, man. Was reading scripture the other day, man, reading about the children of Israel, how they had short-term memory, man.
Very
just
short.
that quick. They forgot that the Red Sea got parted. It's like, man, what's going on? Why are we doing this? Just like, hey, man, do you not remember? Like the whole water, just like we walking on dry ground at the bottom of the sea, bro. Like what are we talking? Same thing with us, man. We forget our own wins, man. You know what I'm saying?
And I know a lot of times with things like journaling, marketing for a number of years has made it seem like that journaling is something that ladies do. Like that's a trait. That's a thing. Women have their nice journals and flowers and all that stuff. But nah, I mean, when you look at scripture, when you look at even that section of scripture in the Old Testament, a lot of what we're dealing with is Moses's journal. He's recalling the movements of God in his life and the life of the children of Israel. And he's writing it down specifically so that when the next generation comes along or when they reach a tough spot, they can look back and retrace where they've come from. And I just want to challenge all the men who are watching us live or watching the replay of this. Take some time, get into the practice of writing down what has occurred in your journey and writing down the things that happen to you from day to day. It's a great way to find and activate courage because you realize, man, in 94, this did happen.
Wow.
In 2000, this did happen. Our family did go through this. Our company went through this before. We faced this challenge, and this is what I learned from it. And this is not the same, but similar to this new giant, to this new mountain, to this new monster. And the stories in the journal are a great place. In your personal journal are a great place to go back and look for and activate the courage you need for this next scenario, next mountain, next difficulty that inevitably you're gonna face.
Man, and conquer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you did exactly what I was going. Hey man, give us one last thought when it comes to something practical that the fellas can do one of the things that I got, and I got this from my brother, I call it I'm kind of writing my personal Bible. And it's not long and it's in my phone. It's just a notes page that when something happens, either it's an answered prayer or something like, wow, okay, you showed up, or something like this. And really that's what the Bible is, right? Like we can find every situation that's going on in life. We can find something that's relatable so that we can be encouraged and realize like what happened, or like, how should I act here in this place based on how Samson acted or Moses acted or whatever the case may be. But there's something about your own little personal. So my brother kind of worded it his personal Bible. Like he writes these things. I was like, man, that's kind of cool. So I'd say probably for the last 5 months, when something pops up, when my wife found that check out of nowhere, like, you know, when things like that happen, we just put it down. And I think that's huge, man. And that actually popped up like yesterday. I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, you know what? That stuff did happen, man. That stuff did happen. So it works. Pierre, man, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. We're going to have to do like a part 2 or something so that we can kind of dive into this. That's right, Vaughn. He said, very true. Much like Elijah when he had to confront Jezebel. That's a whole nother.
Listen.
That's a whole nother show right there,
Listen.
by the way. But no, man, I appreciate you. I'm going to put up here where everyone can find you and find your new book. So this is your website, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you can go here to pierrequinn.com/scared to find the new book. But I'd also encourage you to go there just because if you look at some of the content and some of the keynotes that he's delivered, I was telling him before we hopped on, like I was looking at one of his keynotes when he was encouraging a crowd and telling a story about a track race where someone fell. And then I'm not going to even tell you what happens at the end, but go to his website and watch it. Trust me. It's good stuff. So again, man, thank you. For those of you who have hopped on tonight, Pierre, make sure you stay on. You and I are going to continue to connect. But for those of you who hopped on tonight, thank you for coming on, contributing, engaging. Again, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, as we'll be bringing you just great content every single week with another phenomenal guest. And we're going to sign off tonight, Pierre. Thanks, man.
Thank you.